Title: The Basement Under the Chapel. The chapel stood at the edge of Black Hollow like a warning nobody listened to anymore. It had no priest, no service, no candles burning in the windows, just cracked stone walls, a broken bell tower, and a tall wooden cross leaning slightly to one side, as if even it was trying to get away. For 23 years, the building had been locked. For 23 years, the villagers had refused to speak about what happened beneath it. And for 23 years, every child in Black Hollow grew up hearing the same words. Do not go near the chapel after dark, because something under it still breathes. Elena never believed the stories. She believed in mold, in bad wiring, in rotten beams and village superstition. She believed old people liked to turn tragedy into ghosts. She believed fear had a way of making ordinary things look evil. And most of all, she believed money solved problems. When the mayor offered her a generous payment to inspect the abandoned chapel before demolition, she accepted immediately. One night, one inspection, easy money. At least, that was what she thought as she drove into Black Hollow under a sky packed with thick, unmoving clouds. The village looked wrong the moment she arrived. Not empty. Worse, watching. Curtains moved in the windows. Doors closed softly as she passed. An old woman standing beside a dry well crossed herself when Elena parked near the chapel gate. Elena stepped out, boots crunching on gravel, and called out, "I'm just here for the building inspection." The woman did not answer. She only stared at the chapel and whispered, "If you hear knocking under the floor, don't knock back." Elena almost laughed. Almost. But something in the woman's face stopped her. It was not madness. It was memory. Elena turned away, grabbed her flashlight, tool bag, and camera, then pushed open the rusted iron gate. The chapel grounds were wild with weeds and thorn bushes. Stone angels lay broken among the grass, their heads snapped off, their faces weathered away. The front door was thick oak, swollen by damp, chained once, then reopened recently for her visit. The chain hung loose like an old wound. She stepped inside. The smell hit her first. Wet wood, dust, mildew, and beneath it all, something else. A faint, sour smell, like old water trapped in a sealed place for too long. Her flashlight swept across collapsed pews, cracked, stained glass, and black stains creeping down the walls from the ceiling. The altar stood at the front under a shattered window where moonlight leaked through colored shards. Red and blue light trembled over the floor like bruises. She started recording notes into her phone. Interior heavily water damaged, structural rot visible in support beams, glass compromised, floor stability uncertain. Her voice sounded too loud in the silence. Then she heard it, a soft knock, 3 times, from somewhere below her feet. Elena froze. Knock, knock, knock. She stared at the floorboards. Nothing moved. She exhaled sharply and forced herself to kneel. Maybe loose pipes, maybe trapped water, maybe an animal under the foundation. Still, the memory of the old woman's warning pressed coldly into her thoughts. Don't knock. Back. Elena stood quickly and moved deeper into the chapel. On the left wall, just beyond the pews, she found a row of framed photographs, half destroyed by moisture. She wiped dirt from one of the glass surfaces and raised the flashlight. A congregation stood outside the chapel in the image, dressed in black. Men, women, children, and at the center of them stood a priest whose face had been scratched out. Not faded, scratched, deliberately. Elena moved to the next frame. Another old photograph. This time, the chapel interior. Candles, everywhere. Heads bowed, and again, the priest at the front, and again, the face torn away. The third photograph made her stop breathing for a second. It showed the altar, but the cross behind it had been turned upside down. Her flashlight trembled. Very funny, she muttered, even though nobody was there to hear her. As she moved closer to the altar, her beam caught a metal ring fixed into the floorboards. A trapdoor, half hidden by dirt and fallen cloth. Elena crouched and brushed it clean. The wood around it was darker than the rest of the floor, almost greasy with age. Strange symbols had been carved into the border. Not decorative, not religious. They looked like circles twisted through sharp lines, scratched in a hurry by someone desperate to keep something shut. She took a photo. Then another knock came from below. 3 times. Slow. Patient. Knock. 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 This time it was louder. Not pipes. Not an animal. It sounded like knuckles. Elena stood so fast she nearly dropped her flashlight. The air in the chapel had changed. It felt heavier now, warmer, as if the building had quietly closed around her. She took out her phone to call the mayor. No signal, of course. She cursed under her breath and turned toward the door. It slammed shut. The sound exploded through the chapel. Elena spun around. The door was closed so hard the frame shook. Dust rained from the ceiling beams. No, she whispered. She ran to it, grabbed the handle, and yanked. Locked. She pulled harder. Nothing. Her breathing quickened. It's swollen wood, she said aloud. That's all. Pressure. Wind. But there was no wind. The air inside the chapel was completely still. Then, behind her, the trapdoor creaked open by itself. Slowly, like something beneath it was lifting it with careful hands. Elena turned. Darkness yawned under the floor. A narrow staircase led down into blackness, too deep for her flashlight to fully reach, and from that blackness came a new sound. Not knocking, whispering. Many voices, layered together, soft at first, then clearer. Come down. Elena backed away until her shoulders hit the main door. No. The whispering continued. Come down. See. Remember. Her flashlight flickered. Once. Twice. Then steadied. Elena swallowed hard. Every instinct told her to stay exactly where she was, but another instinct, older and more dangerous, told her something else. If she did not understand what was happening, she might never get out. She took one slow step toward the open trapdoor, then another. The stairs groaned under her boots as she descended. The temperature dropped sharply halfway down. Cold air wrapped around her arms and slipped under her jacket. The smell intensified. Not just old water now. Something fouler, something sweet and rotten. At the bottom of the stairs, the basement stretched out beneath the chapel like a second buried church. Stone walls, arched ceiling, rows of rusted candle stands, and symbols painted in thick black strokes over nearly every surface. In the center of the room stood a circle made of white ash. Inside it was a wooden chair bolted to the floor. Straps hung from the arms. Leather, cracked with age. Elena turned slowly, the flashlight shaking in her grip. This was no storage cellar. This was a ritual room. At the far wall stood shelves lined with jars. Some were broken, some still sealed with wax. She approached one and aimed the light through the cloudy glass. Inside floated clumps of dark hair. The jar beside it held teeth. The next one held yellowed fingernails. Elena stumbled backward with a gasp. Her boot struck something soft. She looked down. A pile of old cloth lay in the corner. No, not cloth. Robes. Dozens of them. Black ceremonial robes, crumpled together as if abandoned in panic. And beneath them, bones. Human bones. Thin wrists. Small rib cages. Children. Elena covered her mouth. No, no. Her voice cracked and dissolved in the cold air. The whispering around her grew louder. The flashlight beam swept to the far end of the basement and landed on a narrow iron door built into the stone. On it, carved deep into the metal, were 3 words. Do not open below. Elena stared at the door, then at the chair, then at the bones. The truth was beginning to form, ugly and impossible. This chapel had not hidden a haunting. It had hidden a crime. No, something worse than a crime. A practice, a hunger. Something the villagers had not merely feared. Something they had fed. Suddenly, Her phone screen lit up in her pocket. No signal, but the voice recorder had turned on by itself. Static crackled from the speaker. Then a man's voice came through, warped and wet. "She is not the first." Elena dropped the phone in horror. The screen stayed lit on the ground. Static hissed. Then, another voice, female this time, whispering through distortion. She came with light. A child's voice followed. So did the others. The phone went black. The basement fell silent. Then, from behind the iron door, something breathed. A slow inhale. Deep, heavy, impossible. Elena could not move. The breathing came again, louder this time, followed by a scrape, like flesh dragging across stone. She forced her legs backward, inch by inch, toward the stairs. Then the chapel bell rang overhead. One thunderous toll. The sound shook dust from the ceiling. Another toll followed. Then another. The bell had no rope, no mechanism. It had not rung in decades. Yet now it screamed above her like a warning to the whole village. Or a celebration. The iron door shuddered. A bolt on its surface bent outward with a metallic groan. Elena turned and ran for the stairs. Halfway up, a hand shot out of the dark and grabbed her ankle. She screamed and kicked wildly. The flashlight spun from her hand, bouncing down the steps. For one terrible second, in the spinning beam of light, she saw the thing clutching her. It looked like a woman, or what had once been a woman. Its skin was pale and stretched tight over sharp bones. Its mouth was too wide, split almost to the ears. Its eyes were white and wet, with no pupils, and blood trickled from its nose as if the body itself could no longer contain what was inside it. It smiled. "Elena," it whispered. She kicked free and scrambled upward, slamming the trapdoor shut behind her. The impact echoed through the chapel. Immediately, pounding erupted from below. Heavy, violent. The whole floor shook. Elena ran to the front door and threw her full weight against it. Still locked. She grabbed a fallen pew leg and smashed the handle. Once, twice, 3 times. Wood splintered. Metal screamed. The door finally burst open and Elena stumbled into the night. Rain poured from the sky now, hard and cold, soaking her in seconds. She ran through the overgrown graveyard, slipping in mud, branches clawing at her face. Behind her, the chapel bell kept tolling, and between each toll she heard it. Footsteps, not hers, following. She did not stop until she reached the village square. Lights were on now in the houses, but nobody came out. She pounded on the nearest door. "Help me! Open the door!" Faces appeared in windows, watching, not moving. She ran to the mayor's house and slammed both fists against it until the door opened a crack. The mayor stood there already dressed, as if he had been expecting her. He was an old man with a gray beard and a polite face that now looked carved from wax. "You should not have gone below," he said quietly. Elena stared at him in disbelief. "You knew." He looked past her toward the chapel hill, where the bell still rang through the rain. "We all knew." "What is under that place?" The mayor shut the door behind her and led her into a dim kitchen where several other villagers were already gathered. None looked surprised to see her alive, only disappointed or frightened. It was hard to tell which. On the table lay old documents, photographs, and a leather book swollen by damp. The mayor placed a hand on the book. "Years ago, before any of us were born, Black Hollow suffered a famine. Animals died. Children starved. The river turned black in winter and would not thaw. Then a priest came. Not from any church anyone could verify. He said he could save the